That being said, we're going to start with that very first question there where it says, what is productivity? Okay, so I'll just simply write down the word productivity. Now, when looking at productivity, you can look at it numerous ways. Some businesses use workers like human workers. Some businesses look at their production through machinery, things of that nature. Regardless of how you do it, it refers to the output per worker. So how productive you are is your output per worker. How much are they getting done on an hourly, daily, weekly basis? Productivity is measured on output per worker. How much are they producing in a certain amount of time? Okay? Now the next part of this sounds really confusing, and if it is confusing, tell me, and we'll simplify it some. Alright? But it says productivity is measured by dividing output by the number of input used to produce the output. Now I know that sounds crazy, okay? So here's the idea. We're trying to figure out how much we produce by dividing what we produce by the number of things we have to put into it. You guys understand that? So, as long as the output is more than what we are putting into it, is it a good or bad thing? That's a good thing because we're producing more, right? If we're having to put more into something and not producing as much, that becomes a problem, okay? So, put down, and again, I write it as a math formula, but you don't really have to do that. I would put down output and the little divided sign, the little line. Output divided by the number of inputs. Output divided by the number of what we're putting into it. So what are we putting in to get out of this? All right. We want to be producing more than what we're putting into it. Okay? So far so simple? Yes, no. Example of this, in my opinion, is take how many parts it is to build a car. Now that's a ton of parts, right? That's a lot of input going into something. Now, if I were to try to sell each of those parts individually, it would be hard to do, right? Not many people have a use for a door handle. Just a little old door handle. But if I put it on a car, it's kind of a necessity, right? So I can make more money by putting all those parts together than what I can trying to sell them separately. Does that make sense? So an output would be the car. The number of inputs would be how much does it cost me to make this? And then how much can I make once I put it all together? You guys see where I'm at with that? So it's outputs divided by inputs. That is your production or productivity. Okay? So, next question is, what is an increase in productivity? And how do we increase productivity and the effects it has on the cost? So, if I'm trying to make more of something, more than likely I'm going to have to buy more of an input, right? And I'm going to have to hire more people or find more machines to help me create it. Yeah. So, an increase in production occurs when the same output can be produced with fewer resources. That's important. That's the part we need to put down right here. That an increase happens, or an increase in production, occurs when the same output can be produced using less resources. Okay? An increase in production occurs when the same output can be produced by using less resources. Is everybody with me there? Like, think about that a minute. If I don't have to use, and we've already talked about this today, if I don't have to use as much stuff to create the same thing, I can make more money. Why? I'm saving material to do what? Make more of it. You guys understand that? So, the example that it gives you is when Henry Ford introduced the assembly line. It says cars could be built with many fewer man hours, an increase in production. So, what he means by that, if they put us 10, 12 people in a room and said build a car, it's going to take us a long time, right? But if I told Connor, you're doing this part, Ashley, you're doing this part, Layla, this part, and we go down the line with it, and we get really good at one task, would we be able to produce more than if all of us were just trying to put it together at one time? Yeah. So, production occurs, or an increase in production occurs when the same output can be produced using less resources. Put in an example, as the example of that, write down the assembly line. We're not having to use as many resources. I know exactly how many of something I need, and I know exactly where they go. I'm saving time. I'm producing more. Production, that's a good thing. All right? We'll do one more and I'm going to stop today because I don't want to bore you to death. Everybody with me thus far? All this makes sense? Please tell me if it don't. Okay. The last thing we're going to talk about today is gross domestic product. You're going to hear me refer to it as the GDP, okay? And I would put those abbreviations down, the GDP. Now, that's a long definition. I'm going to read it to you and then we're going to make it short. It says gross domestic product is a basic measure of a nation's economic output and income. So what we are trying to figure out with the GDP, and it's not just the United States, it's every country, is we're trying to figure out how much of everything we're producing. You guys with me? And then how much money we're making off of what we are producing. Okay? It is the total market value measured in dollars of all final goods and services produced in an economy in 1 year. So, here's how we're going to put this. We're going to put total market value in dollars. Total market value. You guys know what I mean by market, right? Like the type of economy you have. So total market value in dollars of all goods and services, emphasis on the word all here, of all goods and services produced in 1 year. Now, does anybody in here have any clue what the U.S.'s GDP is? If you had to guess, how much money do you think it is?
100 trillion.
What's that?
100 trillion.
It is in the trillions, but it's not quite there. How much stuff do you think we produce and sell in the United States in 1 year? And I'm talking about everything, from food to clothes to video games to literally anything we sell, our output. How much money do you think the U.S. makes? Well, in 2018, it was about $20.5 trillion. 20.5. And I'm still thinking that's still less than what we owe China, but I could be wrong there too. But that's a ton of money, right? That's a ton of money. So, again, GDP is the total market value in dollars of all goods and services produced within 1 year. Y'all got me? Tomorrow, or not tomorrow, tomorrow you'll get notes. But tomorrow, Thursday, and Friday, I'll send you the rest of this, SOLF, and then I'll probably put together a little quiz that I will allow you to use these notes on, because you'll be at home. That's fine. You know what I mean? But then when we come back, we'll probably have a study guide and a test around next Tuesday, just on SOL2, because it's so lengthy. We still have to talk about circular flow and all that stuff. But does anybody have any questions about this? Are we good? All right.